August 8th, 2023. A grass fire ignites above Lahaina. 90 minutes later, it reaches the ocean. An entire town consumed in its path. Hurricane-force gusts, drought-killed vegetation, and cascading infrastructure failures all converged in a single afternoon. But no single cause explains why this fire spread so fast. What destroyed Lahaina was a chain of compounding failures, and nearly every one of them was predictable. A meteorologist stands before a map of Maui, tracing the band of wind that swept down from the mountains on August 8th. The air pressure difference between Hurricane Dora, spinning far to the south, and a stubborn Pacific high created a forceful corridor of wind across the island. Instruments recorded gusts well above 30 meters per second, over 70 miles per hour, hammering the slopes above Lahaina for hours. This was not a passing squall. It was a sustained downslope jet, funneled by the steep volcanic ridges that rise east of town. As the wind descended, it accelerated through narrow valleys, gaining speed and turbulence. On the ground, months of drought had left the landscape brittle. The Keach-Byram Drought Index climbed past 600-degree days, signaling extreme dryness. Soil moisture dropped below 5%, and the fields that once grew sugarcane now held dense mats of fountain grass and guinea grass, both invasive, both highly flammable. Surveys after the fire mapped a 2.3-kilometer corridor of untended fuel stretching from the ignition point right to the edge of Lahaina's historic district. With these winds and this fuel, any spark would have been catastrophic. The meteorologists' models show how, once ignited, embers could be lofted high above rooftops and carried far ahead of the fire's main front. The stage was set for a disaster that would unfold at a speed few could imagine. Embers became the driving force behind the fire's advance. As the windstorm intensified, burning fragments of grass and wood were lifted high above the ground, riding turbulent air currents down the slope toward Lahaina. Fire behavior scientists studying the aftermath traced the path of these embers, some traveling more than 200 meters ahead of the visible flames, landing on rooftops, dry lawns, and parked vehicles. Witnesses described showers of glowing debris raining down well before the main fire front arrived. Satellite data from NOAA's GOES-16 captured the thermal hotspots marching rapidly downhill, confirming that the fire line moved from upland grass to the edge of the historic district in just over an hour. The wind's speed and direction didn't just push the flames, it created a conveyor belt for embers, igniting spot fires far ahead of the main blaze. In these conditions, the traditional defenses, cleared yards, garden hoses, even fire engines, offered little resistance. The fire's advance was no longer a single front, but a series of leapfrogging ignitions, each one feeding the next. By the time the first homes caught fire, embers had already sparked new blazes deep within the town, cutting off escape routes and overwhelming any chance at containment. The shoreline was reached in less than 90 minutes. 3 other urban fire disasters, California's Camp and Tubbs fires, and Colorado's Marshall Fire, trace a pattern that now includes Lahaina. Each began when utility equipment sparked ignition under high wind. The Camp Fire in 2018 started when a live power line contacted dry vegetation in Paradise, California. Within an hour, flames traveled 4 miles, trapping residents as evacuation routes jammed. The Tubbs Fire, a year earlier, followed a similar script, with a power line arcing during wind gusts, embers hurled half a mile ahead of the front, and gridlock on single-lane exits. The Marshall Fire in 2021, outside Boulder, ignited after a distribution line failed. Winds drove the blaze through grasslands into neighborhoods, and partial contraflow plans bought only minutes before roads clogged. In each case, embers leapt from grass to house, then house to house, feeding a chain reaction that overwhelmed firefighters. Early warnings failed to reach everyone. Power lines remained energized as winds rose, and evacuation plans relied on too few routes. Post-fire investigations led to targeted reforms. California and Colorado now require utilities to shut off lines when wind warnings exceed set thresholds. Building codes in all 3 states have added ember-resistant vents and roofing, while evacuation protocols mandate pre-identified contraflow lanes and regular community drills. Lahaina's timeline fits this pattern, but with even less margin for escape. The fire's speed outpaced warning systems and made single-point failures, like blocked roads or delayed shutoffs, immediately lethal. The lesson is clear. Only an integrated policy combining utility shutoff triggers, ember hardening of homes, and engineered evacuation routes offers a real defense when the next wind-driven fire strikes. Smoke poured into the streets, thick enough to erase the world beyond a few steps. By late afternoon, visibility in Lahaina dropped below 10 feet. Drivers found themselves trapped in unmoving lines of cars, headlights swallowed by the haze. The 911 system logged over 12,000 calls in 24 hours, panicked voices reporting blocked roads, burning buildings, and loved ones who couldn't be reached. A bakery owner on Front Street described opening the door to a wall of black, unable to see the curb. A retired teacher tried to escape with her grandson, only to find the main exit jammed with vehicles and fallen power lines. The fire moved faster than anyone could navigate. First responders worked through the chaos, but the town's layout offered little help. Lahaina's historic core was built in an era before fire codes, its blocks packed with wooden homes and businesses, many with tar paper roofs and narrow gaps between structures. As embers rained down, these buildings ignited almost simultaneously. Firefighters later estimated that dozens of homes caught fire within minutes of each other, creating a continuous front of flame and heat. Once the first row of houses burned, the fire leapt from wall to wall, roof to roof. The wind, funneled by the coastal topography, drove flames sideways through alleys and across streets, setting parked cars and utility poles alight. A Maui police officer recalled trying to direct traffic at the intersection of Lahaina Luna Road and the bypass, only to be forced back by a sudden surge of heat. Survivors described the sound of propane tanks exploding, the air full of embers and burning debris. In some neighborhoods, the fire's advance was so rapid that residents had no time to gather belongings or even open their car doors. The density of buildings, the flammable roofs, and the lack of defensible space meant the fire found new fuel with every step. By nightfall, the town's grid had become a trap. Streets were blocked by fallen trees and power poles, while flames cut off both northern and southern escape routes. Some residents fled on foot to the shoreline, others sheltered in place as their homes caught fire. The physics of urban conflagration, radiant heat, ember storms, and structure-to-structure ignition transformed a fast-moving grass fire into a disaster that overwhelmed every layer of defense. No single system failed alone. Instead, visibility collapsed, escape routes vanished, and the built environment itself became fuel, sealing the fate of hundreds caught in the fire's path. The official investigation into the Lahaina fire produced a minute-by-minute timeline that leaves little room for doubt. At 3:12 p.m. on August 8, a voltage drop registered on the north side of Front Street, evidence of an electrical fault as winds topped 70 miles per hour. Within minutes, multiple wooden power poles failed. Aerial surveys after the fire confirmed a 70% pole failure rate in the burn zone. Forensic investigators traced the ignition sequence, matching utility data with 911 call logs and dispatch audio. The findings are clear. Live power lines, downed by hurricane-force gusts, sparked the initial grass fire that quickly jumped to structures. Yet the failures went beyond utility equipment. The county's own compliance records show that less than a third of eligible parcels had completed required fuel mitigation in the years before the fire. Dense mats of invasive grass and uncleared brush created a continuous corridor of fine fuel, stretching from the ignition site to the edge of Lahaina's historic core. When the fire broke containment, embers found easy passage across backyards and vacant lots, aided by months of drought and absent defensible space. Emergency alerts offer another layer of the timeline. The first wireless emergency alert, ordering immediate evacuation, was not sent until 10:31 p.m., hours after the fire had already overrun the town. Earlier notifications relied on a legacy siren system never designed for wildfire, and many residents reported no warning at all. The 911 system, overwhelmed by a surge of calls, could not keep pace with the speed of events. Roadways became choke points, blocked by downed lines and burning debris, with no contraflow plan in effect to clear southbound lanes for evacuation. Even as police attempted to direct traffic, the lack of engineered escape routes left drivers trapped in gridlock as the fire advanced. The Attorney General's Phase 1 report points to a systemic failure. Weather, vegetation, utilities, and emergency planning all broke down at once. In response, the legislature created a state fire marshal's office, mandated utility shutoff protocols for high wind events, and ordered aggressive vegetation mapping and removal within 500 feet of homes. The new evacuation design for Lahaina, built around reversible lanes, automated barriers, and a real-time command center, aims to ensure that no single point of failure can again trap a community. Planners now cite the contraflow plan as a model for other wildfire-prone towns, with live mode drills showing a 4-minute activation time. The reforms are codified by bill number, funding, and agency directive. Forensic evidence and engineering detail have replaced guesswork, offering a blueprint for urgent change. Lahaina stands as a stark warning. When extreme weather, neglected fuels, and fractured systems collide, catastrophe accelerates beyond control. This is not an isolated crisis. It is a blueprint for future risk. Our choices now determine whether we repeat these failures or finally confront the complexity of what is at stake.